I'd like to start with a very important question about what and how when we say we are on the spiritual path. There was a person whose name was Angulimala. The story about Angulimala was a beautiful, like any other beautiful stories, which had so many layers and so deep meaning. So for those of you who don't know who Angulimala was, before he became the Buddha's student, he was also on a spiritual path. He practiced with, a different teacher. Somehow, that teacher told him that you go out, kill some people. After you kill them, collect their fingers. If you can collect maybe 100 fingers, you become enlightenment. You achieved spiritual fruition. And he was a good student. He listened and he obeyed his teacher. He became a murderer in the name of spirituality, right? And he killed people. He collected the fingers. Almost got 100 fingers, but there's one more. And on that day, the Buddha, knew that he could help Angulimala, right? And the Buddha went to find him. Angulimala saw the Buddha, and he was so excited that, this is my final finger. I would become somebody. I would achieve something. So he chased after the Buddha, and the Buddha, kept walking mindfully. The more Angulimala chased, the further distant the Buddha became. So he said to the Buddha, "Monk, stop. And the Buddha, looked at him and said, "I have stopped. You stopped." And he was, startled. What is this nonsense? While the Buddha was walking, he said he has stopped. Why I'm chasing him? He said I should stop. What's wrong here? What's going on with this Buddha guy? I'll leave that I'll leave the story there. The point that I want to mention, I want to emphasize here, is that sometimes we are like Angulimala. We think that we are on the spiritual path, but our necklace here is not the finger, but our necklace here may be different parts of the Dharma, different parts of the scripture that we learn here and there, and then we make it a beautiful necklace. We wear it around our neck, and we think that, okay, if I just collect one more teaching or one more doctrine, then I would become, enlightened. I would become like the Buddha or an Arahant or an awakened being. So then, think about that. In the first place, we want to liberate ourselves from, suffering, right? Somehow we heard that, you should study this, you should study that, collect a lot of things and make it beautiful. like the necklace that Angulimala, was wearing, and think that, okay, I finally got something, and just a little bit more. So we are bound to that necklace without knowing that the thing that we have learned is just an ornament wearing around our neck. And if someone try to argue, try to dispute our views, our belief, we would murder them with our words, with our language, with our views of what we think right is, what right view is. So have you ever faced that, encountered that situation where you have to explain yourself, you have to prove your point? If you do that in in your work, in your other space, I don't care. But if you do that with spirituality, spiritual practice, then there's a problem. There's another Angulimala in us. And we always have that problem. We try so hard to protect our view, the view that we don't even know where did it start, how we come about that view, and now we have to protect it. But it's go against the ideal of our practice, which is to liberate ourselves. Now we are stuck. We're stuck in views. We're stuck with the ego, trying to protect the view. And we say we are on the spiritual path. Does that make sense? Do we really have to go after, people and prove that, what I'm holding is the truth, the ultimate truth, right? So when we say we are on the spiritual path, we are in search. We are in search for something different than the mundane, repeating lifestyle. We want some change. Because we know that there's more to this life, right? Than just, to earn a living and to go through life with mundane concerns. In another sutra, the Buddha said there are two kinds of search. One is noble search, and the other one is ignoble search. So the ignoble search is the search for sensual pleasure, the search to satisfy our senses. And there is another one, which is noble search, which is a search for something bigger than what we perceive. So the Buddha, is like a guy who, show us this is something new that you can do. He didn't put us there. He want to show us. So you done. You bored with your life, right? Come here. These are something that you can try. If you think it's good for you, take it. If not, try another one. Right? So that's the noble search, And he also affirmed that within each of us, there is a seed of awakening. There's a seed, like the seed that the Buddha had, like the seed that all the awakened people, awakened beings have. We have we don't have to believe in him. We don't have to even become a Buddhist to know that we have that seed. Because when you, so we can use any kind of language, but I want to use the word awaken nature, or in Mahayana term it's called Buddha nature, right? Maybe Buddha nature is a big of the word for you, but awaken nature. Even how much ignorant we are. Remember, if there is a room that has been in the darkness for 1,000 years, you don't need 1,000 years to light the room. You only need a spark of light so you can light the room. We have been ignorant for how long? I don't know, for many years. But just one spark of wisdom can, do away that ignorance. So if you can embed that kind of mindset in you, then I assure you that you are on the spiritual path. Second, how, sometimes our ego tricks us, right? It say, okay, you're doing good, you practice correctly, keep doing it. But how do we know we are on the path correctly, Sometimes we know what we practice, but sometimes those things, that we are, if we think we are helping us on the path, actually, and are obstacles. So you think you know certain practice, and you know how to go from point A to point B, and along the way you need a vehicle, right? You need something to go from point A to point B. So a means, a vehicle. You think that vehicle, that means, is to help you get there, but sometimes it could be the obstacle of your practice. Like the severe fingers necklace around the neck of Angulimala. So if you don't believe me, let's take one example. This is my favorite. You live with family, right? You have someone close to you, and on a beautiful day you're doing your practice, and that the one that you love, you care, just cannot stand you. Say, why do you do that? I don't see any benefit from that for you. So you say to yourself, so my meditation practice is what helped me, but now this person whom I love says otherwise. I have to protect myself, self-love, self-care. I have to protect myself. So you argue with them. You argue with them to protect the practice that you do. Is it a right thing or is it a wrong thing? Is the meditation the vehicle for you to get there, or is that the obstacle? It becomes an obstacle when you hold on to it tightly. Because remember, you want to liberate yourself, right? To know that you're on the right path is to, you don't have to say that to people. It's like you having a makeup or a haircut. You don't have to go around and say people, hey, I have a new haircut, or I just put on some makeup. You don't have to do that. People just notice you. So that's transformation. That's indicates that you are on the right path. So when someone criticize you for what you do spiritually, you don't even need to argue with them. There's a shift in your perspective toward the practice and toward people. That's how you know you have changed. That's how you know you're on the right path. If you become more compassionate, more kind to people, then regardless of what they say, you have more. You can include them. You can include that in your spiritual path. That they're saying is not an obstruction of your practice, but that is something that you can include in your own spiritual practice, because your heart becomes bigger when you let the teaching transform you. So what I'm trying to say here are two things. First, what do we mean when we say we are on the spiritual path? And the second thing is, how do we know? We as a human, sometimes we are tricked by our ego. But I think the fruits of our practice will allow us to have that kind of discernment about what you're doing, how much your practice has allowed you to become something bigger and better. Not something that the practice is not something that you hold on tightly and protect it with your life. It's not. Maybe that's your strong opinion, but to me that it's just you are creating another prison for you, the one that you try to avoid in the first place. Okay, so someone asked the question, why spiritual practice is important and what is the aim of this class? Okay, so that what I'm trying to say is why our spiritual practice is important, because our mundane concerns, everyday's concerns, do not satisfy us, right? We want to find something more meaningful. We want to seek something different. We want to free ourselves, free our mind from our current mental state. In order to do that, we don't try to ignore what we are experiencing. All kinds of emotion are parts of us. We welcome all. That's why we need meditation. We need this learning and practice to create holding environment for all kinds of emotion. Because usually people want to get rid of negative emotions. We only want to experience happiness, right? But unfortunately, the Buddha already pointed out for us, there's always that the nagging sense of unsatisfactoriness. There is always something that we lack of, right? So spiritual practice is not to fulfill that. Spiritual practice is the way to allow us to relate, how we relate to that. because we cannot avoid that, but the thing that we can control is how we can relate to that nagging sense of dukkha or suffering, right? It's not what happens, it's not what you think that matters, it's how you relate to it that will make all the difference. Okay, so what your mind thinks is one thing, and what you relate to that is another. And we are trying not to do the first, we do the second, trying to learn how to relate to the thinking. Okay, so we don't in meditation we say we don't become attached, or we don't recoil emotion that arise in us. In Freudian term, it say, the aching despondency, or the rebellions against that which make you uncomfortable, right? So when we say applied Buddhism, is a kind of Buddhism that can be used, can be helpful, can be useful for you. The Buddha once picked up a handful of leaves in his hand, and he said, "Monks, what I teach you is just the leaves, is like the leaves in my hand. What I know is like the leaves in the forest. So what I teach you is useful for you. Useful for you. Don't seek something, that is not useful for your own liberation." There are so many things we can learn, and there are so many approaches we can use to learn, but this course is the applied approach. Whatever I teach you, whatever we learn in this class, it has to be useful to you. So maybe I say 10, 15 things. Take one or two that is useful to you. And I also want to, we want to understand the words useful here. Something useful for you may not be useful for other people, right? Because usually when we know something that is true for us, we want to share that with people, and maybe it's good for us, it's useful for us, but people don't always find what is useful for us useful for them. So don't be surprised if they don't like what you share, because remember the word useful. The Buddha also say that so many things in the Dharma, in the canon, Pali canon, Mahayana canon, there's so many things. Okay, take what is useful for you. All right. Okay, I see you bow, and then I'll read the question in the chat. Go ahead.
Dear Thay, would you mind to share a little bit about the syllabus of the class? How should we expect? Would X class would have a certain topics, or we're just curious. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That's a practical question. The syllabus, I have put down 15 different Dharma terminologies, like 4 Noble Truths, 8-fold Noble Path, 3 marks of existence. But again, this is the first. I know that people in this class have different levels, and different ways of understanding the Dharma. So we will learn basic fundamental teachings as an introduction to Buddhism, but with sutra readings. So I take different parts from different traditions, like Theravada tradition, Mahayana tradition, incorporating teachings, stories, to teach those terminologies. Like when we next week we have another venerable sharing about noble eightfold path, right? So he will do that, and coming week I'll share more about Four Noble Truths, but not like in the just name the terms and explaining the terminology. We'll do that with some related sutra, right? So after this course, I hope that you have a foundation in Buddhism. I don't try to bring everything here, because learning Buddhism is a lifelong journey. I have been learning Buddhism for many years and still learning. So and I also want to navigate this class to make it useful for you. If you want to learn something that is burning, is what you are dying to want to know, let me know. I also can do that as well. Okay. So how can we relate to a person that may cause more suffering? So once again, change.
Two-part question.
And also use that in our, okay. So once again, change is inevitable, but transformation is optional, right? You cannot avoid change. That's just life. That's just how life works. People you love will die. What you cherish will be left behind when you die. You get sick, you become old, all those things. We all will experience those. And transformation is optional, which is how we relate to those things, right? Whether we hold on to things that we cannot do, cannot hold, or whether we let go, whether we accept, whether we acknowledge, that depends entirely on us. Mental state, the way that we relate to each and every emotion that we have. We know what to do with our physical pain, right? But we don't know. We are still confused with our mental health. We can suppress them for a while, but they are there and not going anywhere. So hopefully in this learning we can be able to make our life more bearable, make our life a little bit easy for us. And one last thing I want to say, sometimes acceptance of not knowing could provide tremendous relief for us. We don't have to know everything. Okay? Use our beginner's mind to approach. We don't have to know everything.